Have you ever looked into a stranger's eyes and felt your world shift? Not just a flutter of attraction or a passing curiosity, but something deeper, as if invisible threads were pulling you toward each other across time and space. A moment when the noise around you faded, when your heart seemed to whisper, "Pay attention, this matters." Carl Jung had a name for these moments. Not coincidence, not random chance, but synchronicity, when your inner world and the outer reality align in perfect harmony, creating a bridge between what is seen and unseen. In this video, we're diving into Jung's profound understanding of those soul-stirring connections that defy logic but speak directly to your deepest self. Because sometimes, the universe doesn't just suggest a connection, it orchestrates it with a precision that leaves you breathless. And learning to recognize these sacred signals might just be the difference between walking past your destiny or embracing it with open arms. Chapter 1. The Silent Language of the Universe. The most powerful truths don't arrive with fanfare. They don't announce themselves with flashing lights or dramatic music. They slip in through the quiet moments, through the spaces between your thoughts, through the sudden stillness that washes over you when something genuinely important stands before you. This is how the universe first speaks when someone significant enters your life. Not with noise, but with silence. Jung understood that beneath our conscious awareness lies the collective unconscious, a vast reservoir of shared human experience that connects us all. When you meet someone who resonates with you at this deeper level, something inside you recognizes them before your mind can process why. You might feel it as a strange calm washing over you. The mental chatter that usually fills your head, your insecurities, your judgments, your endless internal monologue, suddenly quiets. In their presence, you feel an unusual peace, as if something inside you just exhales and says, "Finally." Jung called this quality numinosity, a mysterious emotional response that signals something of profound psychological importance. It's not just butterflies in your stomach or physical attraction. It's a recognition that happens at soul level, beyond words, beyond logic. This feeling isn't fantasy or delusion, it's alignment. It's your deepest self recognizing something essential. And in these silent moments of recognition, the universe doesn't need to shout, because your soul is finally listening. Chapter 2. The synchronicities are too precise to ignore. You think about them, and seconds later, they text. You randomly choose a coffee shop you've never visited, and there they are. A song that reminds you of them plays exactly when you need to hear it. One coincidence might be random chance. Two might be lucky. But when these meaningful coincidences keep piling up, Jung would say you're experiencing synchronicity, one of his most revolutionary contributions to psychology. Unlike causality, where A directly causes B, synchronicity connects events through meaning rather than cause. It's as if the universe briefly reveals its hidden patterns, showing you that beneath the apparent randomness of life lies a deeper order. When it comes to significant connections, synchronicities often multiply. You see their name everywhere. You dream about them before important meetings. You both say the same unusual phrase simultaneously. The mathematical odds against these coincidences grow astronomical, yet they keep happening. Jung didn't see these patterns as supernatural, but as glimpses into the unified field that connects all human experience. When your inner psychological state aligns with someone else's, the outer world sometimes reflects this alignment through meaningful coincidences. These synchronicities aren't trying to manipulate you, they're inviting you to pay attention. They're cosmic signposts saying, "There's something here worth exploring." Not because the universe is playing matchmaker, but because these connections often contain exactly what your evolving self needs to encounter. The key is learning to notice these patterns without forcing them, Synchronicity speaks in whispers, in subtle nudges, in those goosebump moments that make you pause and wonder if something greater is at work. Chapter 3. The Mirror of Self-Discovery. Have you noticed how the people who affect you most deeply aren't just people you admire? They're people who make you feel something about yourself. This is no accident. Jung believed that what powerfully attracts us to others is often what we've denied or neglected within ourselves. He called this mechanism projection, when we unconsciously attribute our own qualities, desires, and fears to someone else. But unlike modern casual use of the term, Jung saw projection not as a mistake, but as a necessary process of self-discovery. When you meet someone who triggers intense feelings, whether attraction, irritation, fascination, or fear, they're often reflecting aspects of your own psyche that you haven't fully acknowledged. They become a living mirror, showing you both your light and your shadow. That's why you can't stop thinking about them. That's why their presence feels both thrilling and uncomfortable. They're not just showing you who they are, they're revealing who you are. Maybe you're drawn to their courage because deep down, you yearn to be braver. Maybe their emotional openness both attracts and terrifies you because you've buried your own vulnerability. Maybe their creativity awakens something in you that's been dormant for too long. These soul connections don't just show you what you want, they show you what you need. They don't just fulfill your desires, they expand your self-awareness. The connection may feel like it's about them, but it's equally about you encountering parts of yourself through the mirror they provide. Jung would say these mirrors are essential teachers on your journey toward wholeness. They don't just reflect your conscious identity, but also the gold hiding in your shadows, the potential waiting to be realized, the wounds begging to be healed. So when someone makes you feel more alive, more seen, more challenged than ever before, look beyond the chemistry. Ask yourself, what am I recognizing in this mirror? What part of me is awakening through this connection? If this exploration of Jung's wisdom is resonating with you, consider subscribing to the channel to join our community of seekers. Every week, we dive deep into the insights that help us understand our connections, our patterns, and our purpose. Now, back to our journey. Chapter 4. The Sacred Purpose of Relationship Pain. Here's a truth rarely acknowledged. When the universe brings someone truly significant into your life, the experience isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it burns. Sometimes it breaks you open in ways that feel unbearable at first. Not because the connection is wrong, but because it's doing exactly what it's meant to do, catalyzing your growth. Jung understood that transformation never happens in comfort zones. Real growth requires friction, challenge, even pain. He saw suffering not as punishment, but as an invitation to greater consciousness. When someone touches your soul at a profound level, they don't just activate your joy, they activate your wounds. Suddenly, fears you thought you'd mastered resurface. Insecurities you believed you'd outgrown return with surprising intensity. Past traumas you thought were healed reopen like fresh wounds. Why? Because soul connections create what Jung called a temenos, a sacred container strong enough to hold your darkest truths, your deepest healing. These connections don't cause your pain, they reveal where healing is still needed. Maybe their emotional distance triggers your fear of abandonment. Maybe their strength exposes your hidden self-doubt. Maybe their boundaries activate your old patterns of rejection. Whatever arises isn't random. It's precisely what your soul needs to confront next. This is why significant relationships often feel simultaneously wonderful and terrible. They're doing double duty, connecting you to love while also connecting you to your unfinished healing. The intensity isn't a warning sign, it's a sign that real depth is being touched. Jung would remind us that this pain carries wisdom. Each trigger is an invitation to ask, what forgotten part of me needs attention? What old story am I still living? What wound is ready to be transformed into wisdom? As you move through this sacred discomfort, something remarkable happens. You don't just survive it. You emerge more whole, more authentic, more capable of real connection than ever before. Not because the relationship fixed you, but because it created the conditions for you to heal yourself. Chapter 5. Shadow Work in Divine Connections. Every human carries a shadow, not just darkness, but everything we've denied, repressed, or refused to see in ourselves. Jung described the shadow as the unconscious aspects of personality that the conscious ego doesn't identify with. And nothing, absolutely nothing, activates the shadow more powerfully than significant relationships. Have you ever been shocked by your own behavior with someone important? Found yourself acting in ways that don't feel like you? Discovered jealousy, possessiveness, or neediness you never knew you had? That's your shadow awakening. When the universe brings a soul connection into your life, your shadow doesn't stay hidden. It rises to the surface, not to sabotage you, but to finally be integrated. Because real love doesn't just want your polished surface. It calls for your whole self, including the parts you've been afraid to face. You might suddenly find yourself feeling irrationally jealous, though you've always prided yourself on being secure. You might become surprisingly clingy, despite your lifelong independence. You might fear vulnerability, even though you've always valued authenticity. These shadow eruptions aren't signs that the connection is wrong, they're signs that it's going deep enough to matter, deep enough to heal, deep enough to transform. Jung believed that acknowledging and integrating your shadow is essential to becoming whole. And sometimes, the universe sends someone who so powerfully activates your shadow that you can no longer ignore it. They become the catalyst for the inner work you've been avoiding. This shadow work isn't comfortable. It requires facing parts of yourself you've spent a lifetime denying. But on the other side of this confrontation lies freedom, the freedom of finally embracing your complete self, both light and dark. And in that embrace, you discover a love more powerful than fantasy, a love rooted in truth, in wholeness, in the courage to be fully seen. Chapter 6. The Temporary Teacher. Not every significant connection is meant to last forever, and Jung would argue that this impermanence doesn't diminish their importance. Some people aren't meant to walk beside you for a lifetime. They're meant to change your direction, awaken something dormant within you, or teach you what you need for the next phase of your journey. Jung spoke of the individuation process, the lifelong journey toward becoming your complete self. Along this path, different guides appear when you need their specific wisdom. Sometimes these guides come in the form of lovers, friends, or even challenging adversaries. These connections often feel almost mythic in their intensity. The chemistry is undeniable. The recognition is immediate. The impact is profound. And sometimes, just as powerfully as they entered your life, they exit, leaving you forever changed. In modern spiritual circles, these might be called soul contracts, agreements between souls to help each other evolve. While Jung wouldn't use this terminology, he did recognize that some relationships serve a specific purpose in our psychological development. The pain of losing these connections can feel unbearable. You question everything. You wonder if it was real, if it meant anything, if you misunderstood the signs. But Jung would suggest that meaning isn't found in permanence, but in transformation. Ask yourself, how did this person change me? What parts of myself did they awaken? What truths did they reveal? What strengths emerged through the challenges they presented? Sometimes, the greatest love isn't the one that stays. It's the one that transforms you so completely that you're ready for what comes next. These soul teachers don't come to complete your story, but to prepare you for your next chapter. A chapter you couldn't have written without the awakening they inspired. And in time, the pain of their absence transforms into gratitude for their purpose. Not because the loss stops hurting, but because you recognize the gift within the wound, the eternal lesson carried by the temporary teacher. Chapter 7. Divine Timing and Psychological Readiness. The universe operates by a different clock than your impatience. It doesn't send significant connections when you're lonely, when you're desperate, or when you're trying to escape yourself. It sends them when you're ready, not when you want them, but when you've become the person who can truly receive them. Jung understood that inner work precedes outer manifestation. The quality of consciousness you bring to your life determines what your life can bring to you. And sometimes, the universe waits until you've done enough inner work to benefit from a significant connection rather than be destroyed by it. When you're still operating from unconscious wounds, still seeking someone to fix your emptiness, still running from your own reflection, you attract connections that mirror this chaos. Not because you're being punished, but because like attracts like. Your unaddressed shadows draw in reflections that force you to see what you've been avoiding. But something shifts when you begin the journey inward. When you face your fears, when you heal your wounds, when you stop abandoning yourself, when you learn to be whole alone. Your energy changes, your field clears, your vibration rises not through spiritual bypassing but through psychological integration. And from this place of growing wholeness, you naturally attract different connections, ones that match your evolution rather than your wounds. Jung would call this synchronicity at its highest level, the precise alignment between your inner psychological readiness and outer relational opportunity. It's not magic, it's consciousness creating form. The universe isn't withholding love as punishment. It's waiting for you to become the vessel that can truly hold it. Not from neediness, but from wholeness. Not from fear, but from love. Not from emptiness, but from overflowing. So if you're still waiting for that significant connection, ask yourself, am I ready? Not just wanting, not just willing, but truly prepared to meet someone who will see all of me? To face the shadows they'll inevitably trigger? To do the work this depth requires? Because the universe isn't ignoring your loneliness. It's preparing you for a connection that won't just fill your emptiness, but will transform your entire existence. So when the universe wants you to meet someone, it doesn't rely on chance. It creates a symphony of signals, from the quiet knowing that washes over you in their presence, to the extraordinary synchronicities that surround your connection, to the mirrors they hold up to your hidden self, to the transformations they catalyze even if they don't stay, to the divine timing that brings them precisely when your soul is ready. Jung didn't believe these connections were random. He saw them as meaningful alignments between inner and outer worlds, powerful opportunities for growth, for healing, for becoming more fully yourself. So the next time you feel that unmistakable recognition when meeting someone new, that sense of significance that transcends ordinary interaction, pause, listen, pay attention not just to them, but to what awakens within you in their presence. Because the universe speaks through feeling, through synchronicity, through the quiet knowing that rises from your depths. And sometimes, its most profound messages arrive wearing a human face, carrying exactly the mirror your soul has been waiting to find. What soul connections have transformed your life? Share your story in the comments below. Because in sharing our experiences, we illuminate the invisible threads that connect us all across time, space, and consciousness, creating a tapestry of meaning that Jung himself would recognize as the collective unconscious made visible.